Well, hello and good evening, and welcome to episode 11 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, this week, I'm not actually in the studio. I'm actually in a makeshift studio in Earlham, just about a mile or so away from the Barton Moss campsite. So we've had a few technical difficulties in getting the show ready tonight, but we think we've pretty much overcome them. Just a couple of issues with the lighting. So if it looks like I'm actually wearing some war paint here, that's actually not the case. It's just the lighting and the reflection off my glasses, but hopefully you can put up with that. Anyway, it's been a very, very interesting day. And unless you are living on another planet, or of course in another country, it's most unlikely that you've been actually able to go through the day without hearing the term fracking on the mainstream media, or reading about it in the press. So this is very much a two-edged sword, and we're going to be looking at this as we go through the program tonight. But I want to look at things in a little bit of chronological order before we revisit what's occurred today, which is, I think, a very, very significant turning point in this whole campaign. But the Barton Moss campaign has been running now for pretty much close on 2 months, and a number of people have unfortunately been arrested in that time. But the courts in Manchester and of course in Brighton have been incredibly supportive of the protectors. I almost said protesters there. The protectors with their rulings. Now, I'm sure obviously that the judiciary are upholding the law to the best of their ability, much to the chagrin of the police and perhaps even the Crown Prosecution Service. But in Brighton, during the course of this week, in the first trial of the protectors arrested in the very early stages of the Boreham campaign for sitting on a log and preventing the quadrilla rig from entering the site at Boreham, they were all acquitted. And here in Manchester, the bail conditions which have been issued by the police preventing the protectors from returning to the camp have been overturned in every case when the protectors have gone to the magistrates' court. Even multiple arrests have simply been turned over by the magistrates, the bail conditions have been lifted, and the protectors have been able to return to the camp. Now, last week I did do the 600-mile round trip to go down to the studio in Plymouth, and so I was only gone for a couple of days. But when I got back to the camp on the Wednesday morning, I was told that all the bail conditions had been lifted, and every single protector that had been arrested was no longer restricted from going along Barton Moss Road or going back to the camp. Now, this was before 8 o'clock in the morning. So imagine my shock, having been told this, when a police van turned up to arrest one of the protectors allegedly in breach of his bail conditions. So let's take a look at this short video and let's see what happened.
I have no problem. You're absolutely right. You're right to be here. But, you know, I mean, all these people...
Hang on, we're just going to get the court papers. Do you want to wait for the court papers? You want to wait for the court papers? Because this is, I think, an illegal arrest.
Can I just ask you to start on the paper, please, sir?
Okay.
Thank you.
Until you get moved away from the van. Yeah.
What is your name, sir? What is your officer?
My column number's 15323. You won't be getting me name.
And your rank? Sorry? What's your number?
15323.
And your name, sir?
15323.
But you have a name, I'm sure.
15323.
So what we are witnessing here is the rearrest of Colin Gong, who has allegedly breached bail conditions, yet apparently the bail conditions were all lifted yesterday by the courts. So this is effectively an illegal arrest. But as we're beginning to see, the levels of intimidation are being ramped up by a criminal organisation known as the Greater Manchester Police Farce.
We won't be going anywhere until it's been clarified. Okay?
Right.
So, even the first person to know after Colin.
So once it's clarified that the bail conditions were lifted, this is effectively an illegal arrest.
We don't know anything yet, do we? All I know is that he's detained for a breach of bail. He has conditions on PNC. So he's arrested for
The bail conditions were lifted, as you've been told right from the very outset.
Well, according to yourself, not according to PNC.
Okay, but you could have checked that before you actually lifted him into that.
PNC, they're still valid. Okay?
Okay, sorry, your name again was?
I didn't give him a name. And what I did is I gave him a collar number, which was 15323. You've had that 4 times,
Yeah.
so that's all you're getting. Okay?
And the reason being that you're not prepared to reveal your name?
Listen, I'm not going into repeated dialogue. You've just been told
What's
that he's
his
detained for
collar number? That is
12767. His collar number is. You've been told why he's detained.
Let him out now.
No.
There's absolutely no reason for
Move
this.
away
That's
from the vehicle.
ridiculous.
Once again, the Greater Manchester Police shoot themselves in the foot. So what we see going on here is this is Colin's wife, Olive, who is explaining to the arresting officers that bail conditions were lifted yesterday. So this is effectively an illegal arrest. Now the officers are trying to establish whether or not they have in fact conducted an illegal arrest here, and so they have Colin Gong in the back of the vehicle, and they have acknowledged that they will not drive off until such time as they get confirmation. Now what is also interesting, of course, is, as you heard, the arresting officer refused to give his rank and name, simply offering his number. So once again we see a intimidatory stance being adopted by the Greater Manchester Police, and once it's established, of course, that this is an illegal arrest, then we have to make sure that this goes viral. But obviously at the end of the day we still have a major campaign to address here. We have to stop iGas from fracking on Barton Moss or anywhere else, and this kind of intimidation will certainly only add to the support that the protection community here receive from the local population.
It's just absolutely appalling. You know, they're not a public service to us. Absolutely not.
Well, and the behaviour of the officer here, who refused to reveal his rank, refused to reveal his name, and I think he's beginning to maybe realise that he has indeed conducted an illegal arrest here, and they have agreed at least not to move until such time as they have clarification.
We think it's likely to be proven to be the second illegal arrest of this man in the van, so it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's intimidatory to the nth degree, but of course at the end of the day this actually only helps raise awareness of the corruption and the fact that the Greater Manchester Police actually consider themselves to be above the law.
Yes.
I'm sure it'll be resolved shortly.
Yeah, all it does is stoke the fire in our spirit, because we're not going to let them get away with this.
Absolutely. Okay, well we'll see how this unfolds here. Thanks, Olive.
Then he's detained for a breach of bail.
Okay, so
as we
the
get
Data Protection Act,
Colin will
because
be
your
the first person
PNC
to
is
be
out of
told.
date, you can now be sued also because the PNC database is out of date. Thank you very much for that.
Colin will be the first person to be told.
so why is he still in the back of the van?
Well, it's just been today.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Okay.
And as soon as we got one, so we give them, no, got one.
Go on then.
It's only colleague that said that. Expensive on PNC.
PNC, what's PNC?
Police National Computer.
A computer, yeah.
Your conditions are still coming to valid.
According to a computer.
There's nothing else to sell that's any different. I asked you no, you're obstructing your
No, I did not refuse to give that. I said, would you mind coming over here to the counter?
Am I actually obstructing any?
No.
Just make sure you are going to be arrested.
Now do you get it? Now do you please look there once now. So that has been an act of gross incompetence or something. I've been falsely... Listen to me, please. That's the least you owe me. I've suffered for an act of great incompetence there, and at the start of it, all I ask you to do is come and deal with me on camera to protect me from that incompetence.
3 times we asked you for your name.
Yeah, not once I refused. Every time I said, would you please come and do this on camera?
Colin,
That's all I said.
whatever you say, we have grounds at the time to arrest you for a bill.
Because the computer said so.
So we have grounds to
Because
arrest
the
you.
computer said so.
So we have grounds to arrest you. Okay.
Because the computer said so.
Colin, do you want to remove, do you want to get out of the vehicle?
There's another word I haven't heard yet.
Colin, do you want to get out of the vehicle?
Anything you want to say about what happened there?
No. Do you want to get out of the vehicle?
I'm not quite ready
Do you want
yet.
us to help you out?
No, thank you.
Is that your
No.
cigarette?
I don't think
No.
it's easily that. Was
It isn't yours.
No. Anything you want to say about what
Do you want
happened
to get out of the
Well,
vehicle?
we've got another
Not at
job.
the moment.
We've
I'm
got,
quite happy to
we've
sit
got a
down.
job to go to. We've got
Making
another job
apologies
to go
in
to.
our
We
dress,
have to go
sirs.
to-
Yeah.
So we can ask you to wear the vehicle.
But would you ask me to get out of the
Can
vehicle?
you get out of the vehicle?
I can get out of the vehicle,
Thank you.
yes.
Are you inclined to demonstrate some humanity, officers?
You did. You said, do I want to? You said, do I want
Get
to?
down.
Are you inclined?
There you go.
Are you inclined to demonstrate
Hey.
some humanity, officers?
No, I didn't.
No,
drop it. That's
officer, I
all-
have that fully
all
on video.
camera. All on camera.
Are you inclined to demonstrate some humanity, officers, by way of an apology,
No
or do you
apology
want
or
to
nothing. You just
maintain
hold it.
your
It's okay.
reputation as
Which of the
such?
2 officers was the main arresting officer?
This one.
Can I have your number, please, officer?
I
Since
think
it's
you've had
not
to be
a
called
place.
on 4 times.
You have no caller number on you, officer. Please, can you identify yourself?
323, it's been given to him 5
4
times.
5 were dropped. You can now sue him personally as well.
Okay, what we see here is the tail between the legs, departure, tail between the legs departure of the Greater Manchester Police Farce, who have finally acknowledged that the conditions of bail had been lifted.
For arrest warrants not being shown.
So what we just witnessed here was the illegal arrest of Colin by officers who refused to reveal their rank or their name, only granting us their officer number,
Not even wearing their hats.
not even wearing full uniform.
The
and
hats are the warrants for the rest.
And despite being asked numerous times to identify themselves, despite being told categorically that bail conditions had been lifted, they still insisted on going ahead with the arrest. Greater Manchester Police really have a lot to answer for. The level of competence, or rather incompetence, is truly staggering.
Now, what you saw there was really quite interesting and maybe even a little disturbing at the same time. Because you see, our officer, who looked like he'd come straight off the door of a Manchester nightclub, not only was he not wearing any ID numbers at all, but he refused to give his rank. But what was also interesting to me was that he was being supervised by 3 other officers who were all appropriately identified with the numbers on their lapels. Now, I asked the police the following day whether or not maybe we had actually witnessed an experiment here, because it is a matter of time that before much of the police service is handed over to private security. Some of this is already underway now. But consider the possibility that this was an experiment where 3 established police officers were actually supervising a private security guard and monitoring the way he handled a rearrest situation. And in my opinion, he didn't handle it particularly well. And by the way, was that eyeliner he was wearing? Interesting, huh? Maybe we'll look at the video again and see it for yourself. Now, having asked the Manchester Police whether or not this officer was private security, I was assured that he wasn't. But I think all of the police officers, not just the Greater Manchester Police, but police officers all around the country need to be aware that there is an agenda to replace much of the policing, and it already is, of course. Even much investigative work is now outsourced to private agencies. So how much longer before private security is actually on the streets? And of course, it will actually be paid for by the corporations. So GMP, iGas Private Army, will actually be the iGas Private Army and any other corporation that's effectively paying the bill. So we went on to an interesting week. There were some more arrests. There was some more direct action. There was a couple of ladies from Lancaster who parked a car in the middle of Barton Moss Lane and dropped a block of cement through the floor, thus making it a little bit difficult to move, delaying the convoy for a couple of hours. So the following day, the police adopted new tactics. They gave us an alarm call, which meant that we didn't actually have to get ourselves up, because the police would come along Barton Moss Lane and stand along the road to try and ensure that if there should be any blockage of the road, they had 2 to 3 hours to clear it before the convoy arrived. Now, this is also working in our favour too, because it means that we have the undivided attention of some of these police officers for 45 minutes or an hour or so before walking down to the gate to meet the morning convoy. And some of these police officers are asking very interesting questions, educated questions. It's very apparent, just like at Borkham, it's very apparent that some of the Greater Manchester police officers are doing their own research. They're starting to take a look at the issue for themselves, and they're asking well-informed questions. So this is excellent. And today was the same. I actually had the opportunity to converse with a couple of GMP officers that I hadn't seen before, and they were asking some very interesting questions. So the camp, having been at Barton Moss now for close on 2 months, obviously it's having a bit of an impact there. So let's move on towards the end of the week, because on Friday, it was announced that the French oil company Total, and we look here we have the logo, Total's logo. Total announced that they were planning to buy in to the UK shale gas industry, this embryonic industry that hasn't yet really kicked off, because all we've had is Quadrilla in the Fylde Peninsula and at Borkham, and now iGas with their exploratory well in Greater Manchester. But apart from Centrica buying into Quadrilla earlier, or in the middle of last year, to the tune of some 60-odd million pounds, Total are the first major player to enter into the arena. Now, all of those people who work in the shale gas industry would have been greatly enthused by this announcement, because the big boys coming in, it meant that there is much more money available, and Total announced that they were going to pump in 40 million plus make some other money available for further investment. Now, the fact that Total come into the game here is very interesting, because of course just a few months ago it was confirmed by the French Council Constitutionnel that the fracking ban in France should be upheld. Now, the fracking ban was first introduced by Sarkozy when he was in the Élysée Palace, with the right teeth in there. And when Francois Hollande took over, he continued the ban that Sarkozy had put in place. Now, that ban was challenged by a Texan company called Studbach, and despite the challenge in the French courts upheld that ban. And in fact, shortly afterwards, let me see, we have an announcement that was made by the French Environment Minister. This is Philippe Martin. And he said after the ruling, it's a judicial victory, but also an environmental and political victory. With this decision, the ban on hydraulic fracturing is absolute. Now, France, of course, is significantly larger than the UK, but it's estimated that France may actually have as much as 7 times the amount of shale gas that the UK has. But nonetheless, the French have established an absolute ban. Yet Total come over to the UK and they buy into a company, and ironically, it's a company that I mentioned last week. It's a company called Dart Energy. Now, Dart Energy own a number of licenses dotted around the UK, but Total have specifically bought in to a couple of the licenses over in the East Midlands. And if I pull them up on screen here, there we go. There we go. And what we see here is that it's in a fairly, well, very rural area, actually, of Western Lincolnshire and Eastern Notts. And it's the Petroleum Exploration and Development License numbers 139 and 140. Now, this doesn't particularly surprise me, because when I was doing the Fractured Future tour earlier, I think I have a problem with my my screen here. But earlier in the year, I stated that the Fylde Peninsula and Borkum may be a distraction, because there is a distinct possibility that the real target is the extremely rich coal seams all the way up the east of England. And these companies like Dart Energy and now Total looking to tap into the coal bed methane in these areas. And so I think we have to watch this very carefully. What we have to be very careful of is that we don't end up with a situation like we experienced in Manchester, where the level of local awareness was very, very low. We have an opportunity now that the word fracking, I think, is on everybody's in everybody's lexicon. We have to take this opportunity to make sure that people are really aware of the implications of when this industry moves into town. Now, today, what occurred today? Well, in every single newspaper, every media outlet, they were talking about David Cameron's announcement that he is going to pass the benefits of the shale gas industry down to the community, even making page 2 of The Sun. And in The Sun, he says, hard-pressed Brits could be in line for huge cash windfalls if fracking sites are set up in their neighbourhood. Developers may be forced to pay locals up to several £1,000s in a bid to overcome opposition to shale gas exploration. Now, in the oil industry, there is a phrase, and it's a phrase that BP have certainly used a hell of a lot, certainly since the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster. But the phrase is behavioural adjustment payments. And this is really the recognition that everybody, according to the mentality of the oil and gas industry, everybody has their price. It's just a question of establishing what that price is. And it really should be your first clue that something isn't quite right. Because last year, David Cameron announced that communities that embraced the shale gas industry would receive £100,000 towards the local community, whether that bought a soccer pitch or a village hall or a zebra crossing. But £100,000 certainly doesn't go very far. In fact, a resident of Borkum calculated that it worked out at a Twix bar every year for 10 years for every adult in the community. But obviously, that didn't really stimulate the enthusiasm that Cameron was looking for. So, not satisfied with that, he's now announced that all of the business rates collected from the shale gas operators will be passed back to local authorities. And of course, they are completely broke. And the reason they're broke is because they all followed Tony Blair and Gordon Brown's instruction to invest with IceSave. So that when the Icelandic bank collapsed, of course, then the local authorities lost their pot of money. So now they're all broke, they're all desperate, and basically they are being bribed into accepting this industry into their community. Now, last week on Wednesday, I attended a meeting. It was in the village of Freckleton. It's a small village between Preston and St Anne's, where Quadrilla want to sink their next exploratory well. Now, just offshore, or just off the coast of Freckleton, on the marshes there is an old waste dump. And that waste dump includes some nuclear waste. So the local residents are extremely concerned about the potential risk of drilling a well and then potentially fracking that well in the Freckleton area. Now, the Freckleton community had got together and they had asked me to attend this meeting. They had told the local council that they had invited an industry expert to come along to that meeting, and they'd asked the council to invite a Quadrilla representative. So when I turned up at Freckleton, it was pretty evident that there was no Quadrilla representative there, because I would recognise any of the management team of Quadrilla. But the council were sat at the top table. It was like the Last Supper, as described by Gazer Frackman, who was there. They were sitting at the table, and they opened the meeting by stating that only Freckleton residents could speak, and so people were asked to give their name and their Freckleton address. Well, as the evening wore on, it became very apparent that the majority of the councillors who were speaking were clearly in the thrall, if not the pocket, of Quadrilla. Although there was indeed certainly one councillor who later on in the evening expressed her concern at the behaviour of her colleagues on the council. But as the evening wore on, it became apparent that the council were ill-informed and actually started to make stuff up as they were going along. But the people in the room were much better informed and better educated than the councillors. And they were asking if I could be put to the table and to answer some questions. So the council absolutely refused. So at the end of the meeting, when a few of the local residents there asked if I would stay behind and answer their questions, the local council responded by turning the lights out and turning off the power so that the PA system wouldn't work. Now, this was actually the best thing they could have done, because when I go back to Freckleton in a few weeks, it's obviously going to be an absolutely packed house. So, on that note, let's take a short break and I'll catch you with you in part 2.
Which has transformed the landscape in many parts of the United States and Australia, and contaminated the drinking water and air with highly toxic chemicals and gases.
1 in 3 hydraulic fracturing was using a carcinogen. So it really is a chemical cocktail that goes into the earth, of which up to 40% remains there.
The grandchildren were in the bath and they started screaming and everything that was in the water was burnt.
The MDs have been instructed not to report any negative health effects that they believe to be associated with living over a gas field.
There's nothing inherent about the shale gas process that is going to lead to problems.
Some of this material was actually taken to a large sewage treatment works, which had no capacity to handle radioactive materials of this kind.
800,000 gallons was dumped into the Manchester Ship Canal.
50 seismic events were recorded during just 6 fracking treatments.
What is the minimum depth that the fracking will fracture?
We can't tell you until we drill the exploration.
Have you no idea whatsoever? Because it doesn't look like you've done your research.
Shale gas is part of the future and we will make it happen.
We are just numbers and we are sat on this rich vein of gas, and they will do and say anything to get that gas out of the ground.
60%.
Welcome back to part 2 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, if you're watching this on UK Column Live, then we're going to take questions tonight on the shout box in part 3. So if you have a question that you want to put to me, then Mike, who's in the studio in Plymouth, will feed the question. He'll come online and see what I can do to answer, or maybe point you in the right direction. So that's UK Column Live, sorry, ukcolumn.org/live. Now, on Sunday, yesterday, in fact, at Barton Moss, there was a massive rally, and we had a rally there at, I think it was about the second weekend of December, and there were some 250 people at that rally. Well, by yesterday, those numbers had swollen dramatically, and as we can see here, it's just one shot, but there were estimated somewhere between 500 and 700 people. Of course, the BBC said 300. Some of the protection community said it was pushing 1,000. My guess is that it was something in the region of probably around about 600 or so. It was certainly a big number. So much so that I couldn't get even close to the iGas gate at the back of the rally. I was some 500-600 yards back from the iGas gate. This was a phenomenal turnout. But the real acid test was whether or not the numbers on the ground at the rally on a Sunday could be converted to boots on the floor on the Monday, because the last time we had the rally, when there were 250 people, then the following day there were just 3 people at the gate the following day. And myself and Colin, who you saw getting rearrested in the opening video, were 2 of those 3. So the challenge really was whether or not we were going to beat the 3. Now, based on 750, let's say, 3 times 250, so proportionally, we might have got 9. Well, I'm pleased to report that the numbers yesterday were absolutely phenomenal. And I think I've got I have a slide here where I could show the numbers this morning. There we go. And in fact, when the first truck arrived, I counted 60 people on the gate this morning. Now, part of this was the fact that pretty much everyone in the camp was up, because the media started to arrive at 5 o'clock this morning. And ITV were there to record a couple of sound bites for their daybreak show. And it was just sound bites, because they interviewed one of the protectors for 20 seconds. So they were seriously interested, obviously, in what the protector had to say. Obviously, the whole idea was just to simply say, here's the camp, and I'm sure just to sort of dismiss it. Well, everybody on the gate, and of course people were becoming more and more aware of David Cameron's announcement. And so David Cameron, of course, this morning on the BBC and also in the media, Cameron urges fracking opponents to get on board. Well, a number of the protectors would seem to have taken that rather literally, because, of course, as you see here, when the... Okay. Okay, go for it.
I have no problem. You're absolutely right. You're right to be here. But, you know, I mean, all these people, we go on to our walk.
Well, keep moving, please.
Everybody is moving. Thank you, officer.
Keep moving.
Keep parroting, officer.
Keep moving.
Keep saying unintelligent things.
Stop answering it. Just ignore it. Let keep saying it.
Stop moving. I stop moving for a single second. Don't be ridiculous. What are these feet doing?
Will you keep moving then, please?
I only stop. I don't even stop when you're muttering in my ear.
please.
She has not stopped moving, officer, and 6
She's
cameras
obstructing the highway. She knows she's obstructing the highway. And if she continues, she will be arrested. She can either stand to the side or she will be arrested. So keep moving, please.
She has 6 cameras.
Keep moving, please. You sound like a bully. I'm just telling her. Just keep moving. She knows what she's doing. Keep moving, please.
I know you've got the pips on your
Keep
shoulders.
moving,
You
please.
look like you're in charge.
I'm afraid.
She knows what she's doing.
Your entry to the 100 metres there on the Olympic team it's been denied. You're not quick enough, my darling.
Keep moving then, please.
Maybe next year.
Keep moving.
Why are the police pushing me? I don't understand what they're doing.
And have you consented to being touched?
No, I
Have you consented to being pushed?
No.
Just wanted to be clear for the record.
Stop
Keep moving, please.
Stop
Keep moving, please. Keep moving.
Everybody's moving.
A bit faster, please.
Please stop pushing. Thank you.
Keep moving.
Everybody is still moving.
Keep moving, please.
I've got an old lady again.
Walk round. Walk round the leg.
Please stop.
So we've got 5 cameras taking the same angle. Can somebody come round the other side? People are being pushed.
Walk round.
We look after our own. She's quite fine, thank you. We are looking after Anne. She's quite fine. Thank you.
We're protecting her.
Pretty good myself.
Pushing against the line.
Well done, Jamie.
We shouldn't have to protect her. Protect her.
I'm trying to walk as quickly as I can.
Please
My feet are
walk.
constantly moving. I haven't
We
stopped
have these
once
two
yet.
arrested, please.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
You're joking. It's a farce.
I'm not making you up. Do us a favour.
Scum!
Stand there against the fence.
No, he's not like so.
What's up to the highway? We'll start yesterday. Come on. Sorry. Lift it up.
You alright? Keep moving, please. Keep moving, please. Thank you.
Move that away from my face, please.
No.
Can you move that away from my face?
I'm not in your face. I am not anywhere near your face.
So they're making the law officer go along as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you, please. If you can't keep up with your camera, you're on safety.
That's quite a fancy little thing, that though. How was it held on? Velcro?
Yeah.
How was it?
Screw.
Was it? And your phone?
No, it's not a phone. It's a camera.
A little bit faster.
It's high definition
I
camera.
thought it was your phone.
What's the battery life on that? About 90 minutes.
Where's he gone?
He's up the front now.
He's gone right.
90 minutes.
The guy with the black.
HD.
How long did it take the charge then after it runs out?
About 30 minutes. Enough time for once the trucks are in and...
It's not actually bad though.
No, it's great. And everyone thinks it's a phone.
Exactly, hence exhibit 1.
No.
Just keep it moving, please.
Watch your feet walking back. There's quite a lot of them that
And I'm well aware.
Just send them off to Bermuda or somewhere. Let them stay in their rich places and leave us alone. Stop draining Britain dry.
iGas, what would you say to iGas?
Oh, who are they? Who are you, iGas? Come on, let's see your faces. Let's have names. Then we'll talk to you. I don't know who iGas is. Another rich half-dozen people ruling the world, controlling the world. With no agreement.
Dan, how did you manage to persuade them to let you back in the line?
I don't know. I just yelled with my anger. It was genuine anger. I physically held my footing and kind of pushed them off. Now, I'm not strong enough to push them off if they really intend. But I was so angry, I guess they could, I don't know, I guess they could see. There was too much support for me. I don't understand it, but I did raise my stick, didn't I? Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I raised my stick and I was on the brink. I was on the brink of beating them up. I was so angry with this nonsense that they're looking after me. Will I just step aside? Yeah, will I just step aside so they can push the younger ones? It's just outrageous.
But then when you got back in the line, they then threatened you with arrest.
Yes.
Which, of course, fortunately, they didn't carry out.
Yes. But it's so, yeah, I'm a nuisance to them, that seems obvious, which I'm pleased about. That's what I'm here for. But they just think they can con me into stepping aside, or let me be gently, sort of what they think is gently pushed to the side. It just sets my blood boiling, I'm afraid. I'm the wrong person for that. So I will get to the point where I won't be rational at all. I won't care about the risks. I will just fight for what I want to do.
It is outrageous, isn't it?
It is.
And you're an absolute gem. I mean, you've been a stalwart right from the first day that the trucks arrived here.
Yeah, I've been so lucky to find a way of being really, really useful and powerful, living up to my name.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay, apparently we're blocking the road.
Oh, we're blocking the road. Who for? Who wants
it's only
this
the police.
road?
It's only the police, so
yeah.
I wouldn't sweat it too much.
No, I wouldn't worry about them.
Well, we've got a couple of hours, I guess, before the trucks come out. Should we go get a cup of tea?
We actually weren't planning on showing that video till a little bit later in the show, but we had a line drop between Earlham and Plymouth. So, oh gosh. Okay.
If you take an active interest in maintaining the optimum health and well-being of yourself and your family, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is the magazine you've been waiting for. Having taken Australia and New Zealand by storm, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is now available in the UK and Europe. Visit www.nznaturalmed.co.uk or call 01626 337 531 to order your copy now. If you take an active interest...
Well, we experienced a couple of line drops there, so the video, which was going to be played a little bit later in the show, you've seen a little bit earlier, and the ad break covered the other line drop. Fingers crossed we can keep the line open between Earlham and Plymouth for the remainder of the show. Now, as I was saying before we lost the line, David Cameron announced today, he said councils that back fracking will get to keep more money in tax revenue. And he has urged opponents to get on board. Well, some of the protection community actually took that rather literally. And when the convoy arrived this morning, a couple, well, in fact, 3 people in total, rushed along to the side of the convoy and climbed onto the trucks, which meant that the convoy had to stay on the A57 for a while, and the protestor removal team had to be called from central Manchester. So the protester removal team duly arrived, and I have to say, the way they conducted themselves was absolutely exemplary. They treated the protectors that had locked on with absolute respect. And obviously they gave them opportunity to come down before actually arresting them. And one came down quite early in the exercise there, but 2 others actually hung out until the bitter end, which delayed the convoy for 2.5 hours. But whilst the convoy was delayed, the police and IGAS tried another tactic. And what they did was there were 4 vehicles that were elsewhere in the area and they were not part of the convoy, and they swung them into the lane. They drove up the A57 and then swung into Barton Moss Lane at about 15, 20 miles an hour. And one of the protectors would not be breathing right now were it not for the absolute heroic action of one of the GMP officers. Unfortunately, I didn't get his number, but I know that his name was Gareth. And basically, the iGas truck driver, or the delivery driver delivering to the iGas site, had his foot firmly on the accelerator and was determined to get into Barton Moss Lane. And despite the fact there was a protector blocking the road, the truck driver was not going to stop. So the protector's name, by the way, is Darren. And Gareth, if you are watching, or if any of his colleagues in the Greater Manchester Police are watching, I have been asked by Darren to pass on his gratitude, although he didn't appreciate it at the time because he thought you were bundling him to the floor. When he realised what had happened, he absolutely appreciated that you had saved his life. So thank you very much for that. And, you know, I will call the police behaviour as I see it. If they behave with undue aggression, I will call it. But like today, when they show a remarkable act of selfless courage, I will also call it. So today was a mixed day in many respects, but the convoy did actually make its way up to the iGas gates. And it's going to be very interesting to see how things unfold now, because obviously David Cameron wants this industry to kick off in a big way. Now, last week, as I said, it's going to be Dart Energy that pick it up in the East Midlands. But let's not forget that basically this is the area of the country that is effectively now up for grabs. Michael Fallon has put the whole of that green area that you see on the map up for grabs by the shale gas industry. So this is no longer a question of, you know, I don't have to worry about it because it's not in my backyard. If it's not in your backyard now, it's coming to a backyard near you anytime soon. Now, we paid the price in Manchester because the campaign there has been running for nearly 2 months, and it's only now that we're starting to see the sort of numbers that we had anticipated right at the start of the campaign. We're playing catch-up. Can't afford to do that elsewhere. David Cameron has thrown down the gauntlet. He's bribing the councils with offers of not just hundreds of thousands now, but potentially millions. Behavioural adjustment payments are on offer. Now, the Barton Moss campaign is critical with the camp, but the camp alone is not going to bring about the changes that we need to see. It is only when the people in the local community let it be known to these companies that they do not have the social license, that they will not sit back, they will not descend into apathy. Once they look at this for themselves, I think they will quickly realize that this is not an industry that they want anywhere near them. Now, what we are going to see, of course, is an increase in consultative meetings. And I would very much like to be able to attend as many of those consultative meetings as I possibly can in the coming weeks and months. But unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, I need some support to do that. I can't do it alone. So last week I ended the program with a request for donations to the Fracking Awareness Campaign so that I can stay on the road, so I can focus through 2014 on fighting this abomination in the UK. Fortunately, there are many other people as well participating in this campaign. We don't have the panacea. No one person, no one group is going to be able to challenge the Cameron agenda, but collectively, we have enormous capacity to beat this. We know we've already got the industry on the run. This is why Cameron is now throwing the behavioural adjustment payments at the local authorities, because he knows he can't get this industry into play in the normal way. Now, what's going on elsewhere in Manchester is that as the operation gets underway, and by the way, this is what the rig looks like at night. This is the rig that was used by Quadrilla in Priest Hall and also at Borkham, iGas have now started drilling. And one thing I can pretty much guarantee is that the residents of Tunnel Farm and Brighton Grange Farm, which are the two closest properties to the iGas rig, if they were pro-iGas or pro-industry, they won't be for too much longer, because I'm camped about half a mile away from this rig. And let me tell you that it's like somebody grinding an apricot kernel in a bowl. And this at 4 o'clock in the morning really doesn't help with the sleep patterns. And imagine this going off all around the country, because that's what we're potentially looking at. Now, these companies, they are required to hold consultative meetings with the local community. And I get a delivery every now and again through my tent. Comes a little envelope, I know not from where. And in these envelopes are the minutes of the consultative meetings that iGas hold with the local community. Now, I want to share some of these minutes with you, because they're quite revealing, actually. So here's the first part. This is the meeting from Thursday, the 12th of December. Now, you may recall this is the meeting that took place at the Salford Sharks Stadium, and in a previous edition of Fracking Nightmare, I showed what happened when a number of local residents, and including a few people at the camp, turned up at the stadium, and iGas refused everybody entry. And at the meeting, the issues were discussed, the impact on local businesses, such as lost customers. And of course, this is something that iGas and the local authority should have discussed with the businesses in the area. Did they really expect to get a free rein? I would suggest it's rather remiss. Well, certainly these companies like Dart Energy and Egdon Resources and Eden Energy, Celtic, they need to be consulting with not only the local residents, but any businesses in their area, because what is happening right now at Barton Moss is going to be replicated anywhere and everywhere where these motherfrackers want to try and get their bits in the ground. So the other question was, Mr. X discussed the difficulty in trying to sell property. Now, could this be the owner of Brighton Grange Farm, which is right opposite the rig, just across the M62 motorway? Brighton Grange Farm I also discussed in a previous edition of Fracking Nightmare. Brighton Grange Farm is on the market for £975,000. Well, it's not just Brighton Grange Farm that won't sell. In reality, anywhere where this process has been unleashed beneath the community, it has had a significant detrimental impact on the property values in that area. The property market in the Blackpool area is pretty much moribund, but the impact on Brighton Grange Farm is going to be replicated right across the country. Property values are going to absolutely tank. So if you're not concerned about the contamination issues, the contamination of the water, the soil, or the air, maybe you might be concerned, or people you talk to might be concerned about the significant drop in the value of their property. Now, let's look at some of the other issues that were discussed at that meeting. A number of residents questioned why they had not been aware of the community liaison group meetings. I wonder what the response was to that one. Well, John Blaymyers, who is the Chief Operating Officer of iGas, he advised that iGas is committed to engaging with the local people about its plans. And he referred to information days, leaflets and drop-in sessions held for residents as examples. Well, Mr. Blaymyers, the Protection Camp have held a number of meetings with the local community around Peel Green and Earlham and Cadishead, and the vast majority know nothing about your meetings. So that's why you hold them in rooms that are 12-foot square at the back of the Boys Note golf course, because you know that basically you haven't really invited anybody, so nobody's going to turn up. So what else was discussed at the meeting? Here we go. Several attendees suggested a public meeting should be held. But John Blamires explained that he would not be inclined to hold a public meeting. Well, I wonder why that is, Mr. Blamires. What is it that iGas could possibly be trying to hide? What is it that you're concerned about that might be exposed if you held a public meeting, particularly if that public meeting contained people in the audience that actually had a little bit of insight about this industry? But, you know, we've mentioned behavioural adjustment payments. Is John Blamires, in case you actually see him walking around the iGas site at any point or trying to gain access. I'm sure he can be given an escort out of the iGas site back to the A57. Well, Mr. Blamires, let's have a look at the behavioural adjustment payments that may be influencing your good self. Here's the iGas stock price. It closed today at 125.01. This is pence. So £1.25. But let's look at what happened following David Cameron's announcement today that he is going to offer behavioural adjustment payments to local authorities. What a massive jump. A massive jump. And it wasn't just iGas. The same happened with Dart Energy and with Eden Energy, Egdon Resources. So the price of the iGas close on Friday was 107 pence, and it closed today at 125. So that's a jump of 18 pence in the stock price. Now, of course, the announcement by Total that they were coming into the UK or buying into the UK shale industry might have been a bit of a tip-off. So what's going to be very interesting, of course, is when the stock exchange actually do a little bit of research to establish just how much insider trading took place on Friday so that people in the know could benefit from this significant jump in the stock price today. So let's just take a look at what that actually means in terms of value. Well, Andrew Austin, this by the way, is information that is all in the public domain. If you search if you put into your search engine, iGas Share Incentive Plan, you can find this information for yourself. And according to that information, as of October 23rd last year, Andrew Austin had 10.667075 million shares. Stephen Bowler, who's the Chief Financial Officer of iGas, has 77,822 shares, and John Blamires 27,822. Let's convert that into the increase in value of their stock holding today. Just today. This is the difference in their stock, the value of their stock holding from Friday afternoon until close of play today. So Andrew Austin has today made £1.92 million. Stephen Bowler, £14,000, and John Blamires, a rather pathetic £5,000. My goodness, John, you are so cheap. You can be bought for £5,000. This is disgusting. I tell you what, John, I'd be knocking on Andrew Austin's door tomorrow and asking for some of his 1.92 million. And by the way, I shall, of course, be making sure that this information is available to the members of the Community Liaison Group, because I have the details of your next meeting. Of course, you have 24 hours or so if you want to change the venue. But our intelligence network is probably just as good as yours, so we'll know where the meeting is, and we'll make sure that the attendees of this meeting have this information, and they can ask you how much foreknowledge you had about this phenomenal opportunity, thanks to David Cameron announcing that he is going to offer the behavioural adjustment payments to local authorities. Well, you know, what price? What price is there on playing Russian roulette with the water supply of this country? This is actually an embarrassment. And one of the reasons that the likes of John Blamire and Stephen Bowler and Andrew Austin and their colleagues in the other shale gas companies like Francis Egan of Quadrilla, Gerwyn Llewellyn-Williams of UK Methane and Coastal Oil and Gas. The reason that these gentlemen will not hold public meetings is because they know that if there is anybody in the room that has done any research for themselves, they will hold the moral high ground. The one thing that you will never, ever hear any of these gentlemen say is, look, go away, do your own research, look at this for yourself, and you'll realise how safe this industry really is. Because they know that when you do look at this for yourself, you're going to very quickly realise that this is not something, regardless of the money that's being thrown at you, although I'm sure that some people will say, you know, I'd rather take the money, I'll take a gamble. Well, you're gambling with your children's future and your grandchildren's future. And if you want to do that, then I really feel sorry for you, because you've sold your soul. That's what it boils down to. You have sold your soul. It's tough decision, perhaps. Well, not really. Not really. It shouldn't be a tough decision at all. And David Cameron has shown his true colours. He is a socio-psychopath. He doesn't give a monkey's cuss about the future of this country. He's sold it down the proverbial swanee. We have foreign companies like Total who are not permitted to frack in their own country, so they come over here and frack in ours. Well, this is sadly the nature of the beast that we are dealing with. And I absolutely implore people to do their own research. There is a plethora of information out there. If you just remember one thing from tonight, go search the list of the harmed. The list of the harmed now contains some 2,600 plus documented cases in the US where people have suffered from contaminated water, they've lost their livelihoods because of contaminated soil, soil where you cannot grow crops, soils and water supply that can't sustain livestock. And this is all in countries that are much less densely populated than the UK. The UK is 20 times more densely populated than Colorado, 12 times more densely populated than Pennsylvania, and 100 times more densely populated than southern Queensland. It should be a no-brainer. David Cameron has made a few people in this country very happy. I've no doubt that Andrew Austin, Stephen Bowler and John Blamires have cracked open a few bottles of champagne tonight, along with their colleagues in the other companies. They are riding on the backs. They are making money off the backs of the future generations of this country. You have a choice. You have a choice. You can accept the behavioural adjustment payments being offered by the socio-psychopaths who purport to be the elected leaders of this country, or you can ignore the political process completely, because it's proven that these people are not listening. We have to vote with our feet. We have to show them that they are not going to be able to move their trucks onto the well sites without the opposition of the people. What is happening at Barton Moss right now is going to be replicated wherever the socio-psychopaths try and get their bits in the ground. More and more people are waking up to this. That's all we ask. Do your own research. Look at it for yourself and come to the realization that if we want to protect this country for future generations, we have to participate right now. We'll see you at Barton Moss. If not, I'll see you next week for episode 12 of Fracking Nightmare.